Good morning, everyone. Oh, it's a delight to see all of your faces in person and all those joining us online. Thank you for being with us this morning. I'm coming to you live from the corner of Fillmore and Clinton Avenue, grateful to be here and grateful that you've come to be with us in this moment. Welcome from the comfort of your homes, from wherever you are and however you are feeling. You are welcome just as you are. No pretense, no requirement, no to-do lists, no obligations. You are welcome here in this moment. I hope you find a way to get comfortable and relaxed in your own body to enter into this time of community and connection. I'm so grateful to be with all of you this morning. To start off our service, which is based on the book of Esther and the holiday of Purim, I'd like to read a poem called Purim Greetings by Simon Jacobson. May you be turned inside out, upside down and outside in. May your masks be masked. May your inside unmask. May your countenance shine from within, and may you meet yourself face to face. May your masquerade no longer be needed as the shrouds fade away. May your child smile and dance as the facade is lifted. May you just be. Welcome, everyone.
Time for our chalice lighting. We light this chalice in the search for truth and the spirit of love. We unite in worship and fellowship. As an extension of lighting our chalice, I want to take a moment of silence to light these candles for some of the names of those who have recently been affected by police brutality. We cannot cover all the names of those affected, and for others, issues as well. We light a candle for the life of Shelley Frey, for the life of Miriam Carey, for the life of Darnisha Harris. We light this candle for those we have lost in Ukraine and Yemen. We light this candle for the 81 men who were executed in Saudi Arabia.
Thank you, Sarah Rachel, for that chalice lighting, for those words, and for those issues that you brought to light with us. We open our service with our opening hymn. Havenu Shalom Aleichem. Thank you.
Shalom.
Now's the time in our service for joys and sorrows. If you are visiting with us for the first time, this is the time when you can introduce yourself. For those who are gathering in person, we invite you to raise your hand and then stand where you are seated and speak aloud your joy or sorrow. The minister will then repeat what you have said into the microphone, or those joining online can hear what you have shared. I will drop a blue pebble in this bowl to signify the ways you help add to your community by sharing what is on your heart. For those who are joining us online, we invite you to type in the chat your joys and sorrows. Sally will read them aloud, and I will drop a blue pebble in this bowl again, signifying the ways you add to our community.
So we are, actually, I did forget to do this. We're going to change it up. Sally's going to pass around the microphone and then come back to read off the things that are in the chat box. I want to say first, though, a sorrow that has befallen our community, first and foremost. It is really sad and grave news this week when we heard that Jennifer Hyman passed away. She was 35 years old, just graduated law school and was about to start as her own client and lawyer. Her family does not know how she died and are trying to figure out the details surrounding her death. I encourage all of you, I know we sent out a message on behalf of the congregation. There is a GoFundMe page to help raise money for funeral expenses. I, of course, encourage everyone, if you can give, to give. Also, please know that her family is accepting condolences. So if those interested to send condolences, I do have an address. I'm not going to announce it at the pulpit, but please come find me after the service and I can send you the address of her family. Jennifer was an incredibly passionate, bright, energetic person who came to know us during the pandemic and whose energy was palpable from the Zoom screen. I know that we will miss her very much, and I know how much she meant to our community. We're going to light a candle, as you see, a fourth candle at the beginning, in honor of her memory for this service. Thank you, everyone. Kathy, I see you have a thing to share this morning.
I just want everybody to keep in their hearts and minds 3 church members. Kate Nielsen is still at Eggers. She's doing pretty well. She thinks she'll be out in a couple of weeks. But, of course, cards, even visits are welcome. Eggers does require a test as you go in, a rapid test, so it takes a little time. And then keep in mind Larry and Marge Becker. Larry, of course, is still, they're both suffering some medical issues and they're having a difficult time. So if you could reach out to them. Marge, however, has trouble talking. So it would be best if you reached out by card or email.
I'm so glad to be here today. I'm not usually here on Sundays. We have obligations at home, but I'm here because my husband is with his mother with our son, Louis. So they're taking care of her today. This afternoon is an event at Hub 17, which you may know is an art gallery on Wave Street. They are celebrating Women's History Month with a day-long event, and part of it is a panel discussion of women in business. And I'm one of the panelists. So my question they asked me to answer is, what advice would I give to a young person starting in business today? So it should be interesting, and I invite you all to attend, or at least it's good to share that good news.
Congratulations, Viv. I'm glad that you're being honored in that way. I know you've done such great work with your business, so congratulations.
Hi, everybody. I'm Chris Johnson. Friday, I spent the day with Susan McAnanima, former member of this church. Many of you know Susan. So we were up at the Botanic Garden having a grand old time traipsing around. And I send Susan's good wishes, and by extension, I'll include George in that mix. You know, they're both doing well. Their family is doing well. And hopefully she'll be making a visit to Staten Island before too long. But, you know, Susan says hey.
Grateful to hear from Sue and George.
So this is a personal joy. I don't know how many people know, I've been kind of talking about it. We are expecting another baby in our family in September. My son Joe and his wife Tanya are expecting.
Congratulations, Kathy. Sally, you want to see if anyone's in the chat box?
Yes, the message in the chat box from Suzanne is, we will so miss Jennifer. And Kate said, I want to thank everybody for their concern and good wishes.
Kate, we're thinking of you. And yes, it has been shocking and hard news. And I know it touches so many members of our community to hear about Jennifer. And her aunt, which really is one of her closest relatives, just sends overwhelming gratitude for our community and for all those who are supporting and grieving with her for the memory of Jennifer. Any other joys or sorrows this morning? Or if there are, if you wish to, new members or new visitors who'd like to introduce themselves, please feel free to, though no pressure. All right, we're going to go ahead and enter into a time of meditation and reflection this morning, everyone. Thank you for sharing. O Spirit of life and love, we are grateful to gather together again in multiple ways, online and in person, to be in community and to share the milestones and the journeys of our lives. Let us take a moment of silence to reflect on the joys and sorrows that we've shared and those that weigh closely on our hearts. We are thankful for this time to reflect. May those who are sick and in need of healing, those who are recovering, or who are far away from us, or those who are grieving, be comforted, be surrounded by love, and understand the whole community that's part of them. May those celebrating joys, like new births, like new opportunities, like honors to speak, or new jobs, or even just new connections. May we celebrate those joys with each other and carry them with us to whatever lies ahead. For this and for so much more, we say amen.
The reading this morning is a poem that I wrote called Women on the March. Women on the March. Behold the burqas flying in the breeze, women sitting in the sand, silent and subdued. Behold the women in Purdah, hiding behind the palace wall in darkness and subjugation. Behold the blood-stained hanger in the alleyway as a female figure stoops over in death to end the pregnancy. Behold the female body atop the straw pyre as the flames consume the witch. We, the life givers of the planet, who have been the victims of patriarchal customs and domination, can find no peace and respite in the ongoing assault on women's rights. We will not be left behind. We will march and protest nonviolently until we have equality. As brothers grasp for power and money and play with their war toys, as they destroy our world by greed and indifference, we will stand together in love and pull us back from extinction.
Thank you, Sarah, for those powerful words and for that beautiful poem. I know how much it takes to share something that you've written, so thank you for that gift this morning. The Book of Esther. The Book of Esther is one of the shortest scrolls of the festivals of the Jewish year. The story of Esther is celebrated at the Jewish Holiday of Purim. Purim comes from the word pur, meaning lots or casting lots, which happens in the story. What I love about the festival as a person who's not Jewish is that it's somewhat similar to Americanized Halloween. It has masks and costumes and lots of glasses of wine and stomping and yelling at parts of the story, and of course, three-pointed hat cookies called Hamantaschen, after the evil character of Haman. And the story of Esther is in many ways like a fairy tale. So let's begin at the beginning. Once upon a time, during the Persian Empire, King Ahasuerus, or Xerxes I, was looking for a new wife. Throughout the land, all maidens were called to be shown to the king, so that the king could pick out his new queen. Esther, whose parents passed away when she was young, was raised by her uncle Mordecai. Esther was trained to be beautiful, and she found herself soon in the care of a group of courtiers. Now, her uncle Mordecai and Esther were both Jewish, and Mordecai asked Esther to not say anything about her heritage so that she can have a better chance of being chosen by the king. The day comes to be shown to the king, and upon seeing Esther, the king decides that she is the fairest of them all and chooses Esther as his queen. Enter our story villain, Haman. Haman is a wealthy advisor on the king's court with power and influence. The king threw lots among his advisors to decide who would make decisions on behalf of the king, and Haman was chosen. One day, as Haman is walking about, he notices that while others bow and show supplication to him, Mordecai does not. And Haman finds out Mordecai is Jewish. So because he wasn't bowed down to, he decides to take the king's ring and the king's power and make a decree on behalf of the king to tax and destroy all the Jewish people in Persia. Mordecai finds out about this decree and sees terror and famine and hardship placed on the Jewish people. He asks Esther to go to the king and to tell him of what's happened, hoping that if she has favor with the king, the Jewish people in Persia will be saved. Esther tells him if she goes to the king uninvited, she could lose her life. He begs her to go anyway, saying, and I quote from Esther chapter 4, 13 through 14, "Do not think that in the king's palace you will escape any more than all the other Jews. For if you keep silence at such a time as this, relief and deliverance will rise for the Jews from another quarter, but you and your families and your father's family will perish. Who knows? Perhaps you have come to royal dignity for such a time as this." End quote. So Queen Esther approaches the king, and thankfully, he grants her welcome. She invites him and Haman to a 3-day festival. She brings the best food, the best wine, the best entertainment for the king. And the king says, "What is your wish? If you want half of my kingdom, I will grant it for you. What do you want?" On the 3rd day, she finally replies, saying essentially, "All I want is my life and the life of my peoples. For Haman has decreed under your name that all of my people are to be destroyed." The king grows furious to learn about this and seeks revenge on Haman. Our story nicely wraps up with Haman being brought to trial, Mordecai getting a place on the royal court, and all Jewish people being saved. There may be other ending parts to the book of Esther I didn't quite read, and I know this is a retelling of it, so I might not have all the facts, but essentially, that is the story of Esther. There's a lot to unpack about this story. It's a fun story, but I keep being struck by this simple fact. Out of the 39 books in the Hebrew Bible, only 2 of them are named for women characters, the book of Ruth and the book of Esther. There are lots of other women leaders across Jewish scrolls and the Torah, people like Miriam, Sarah, Hagar, Rachel, women characters with names, women characters with stories. And there are also lots of them without names. The book of Esther is one story where a woman owns her name, and also a story where a woman gets the power to make decisions and has agency. A story of someone using their privilege and agency for good. And the story is undeniably a woman's story. Everywhere in the arc of this narrative, Esther is trying to live within the confines and the structures of the men around her. She's working within the specific rules of the king and his court to become queen. She hides a part of her identity to be able to gain power at the insistence of her uncle, another male figure in her life. She's constantly trying to navigate her precarious station and status around the rules of men in her life. And this is not unusual for women-identified people, including and especially trans women and non-binary people. There are so many rules. Rules of society, rules of culture, rules standing around what it means to be or exist as a woman. And they often intersect in particular ways with our religious, our racial, and our ethnic identities as well. Understand that she hid a part of herself, her ethnic and religious identity, in order to gain the favor of the king and play in the systems of the court. And it took her personal grave risk, a risk that could have taken her life, to be outspoken about all of who she was. In fact, what she asked for in this story, if you notice, is, can I have my life? Can my people live? This story is specifically about a Jewish woman asking for the survival of Jewish people. And this is not the only time this has happened, right? We can look at the Black women who founded the Black Lives Matter movement, or the Indigenous women who founded Indigenous activist circles, fighting for the survival of their people. But I can't help but think of how women everywhere ask, as women, can we live? Can women-identified people live? Can we be heard when we witness and understand rampant inequalities that still persist for women? Everything from our paychecks to our housing to our health care. Can we be trusted when we speak of the injustices that are faced by women of color or by trans women or non-binary people? Can we be heard when we speak of trauma? Trauma that runs deep and is perpetuated by the, quote, rules of our society, like sexual harassment or violence or abuse. Can people who have uteruses have the agency to control what happens to our bodies? When will the kings of our world stop passing laws and creating environments that spell out our death? The question lingers from generation to generation to generation of women who've survived to the next generation. And I find that one of the only answers to these questions that are inherited is actually a statement from Mordecai that happens at the turning point of the story. Mordecai tells Esther, "Perhaps you have come to royal dignity for just such a time as this." This invitation, just such a time as this, asks that whatever precarious privilege may be won, that we use that power and privilege to help those around us. Esther in our story is afraid to speak out. She knows of the risks of being brought to the king without invitation. And I'm sure she was aware of just how much she could lose, the livelihood, the safety, the wealth that she fought hard for by playing by the, quote, rules. When I think of myself as a cisgendered white woman, I think about what I was taught to be a woman growing up: to stay silent, to not ruffle any feathers, to smile and shrug it off if something happens to me, if things get uncomfortable. Why am I caring about that? That was just a joke, right? It's not important. Sound familiar? What I learned is that in my culture of not wanting to be confrontational, of wanting to be accommodating, of not wanting to get in anyone's way, was maybe a survival tactic, but was a way of playing by the rules. The rules of white supremacy culture, the rules of patriarchy, of gender roles, of oppression. And when silence feels easier or better, maybe we gain safety. But for me, I know I also can lose my ability to change things. All the while, there are others, other women and other people that don't have the option to stay silent or to make it easy. Even in this story, right? In this story, we hear about Esther, but there are other Jewish women that got harmed by Haman directly because they couldn't hide their Jewishness. People who faced the oppression, who didn't have the privilege to subvert the system. Esther had a lot to lose, her very life, but she chose to risk it anyway. She spoke up about all of who she was, about the injustices happening to her community. She laid the truth to bear, and because she was brave enough to do so, she changed the course of history, and she saved her people. She was the person that was needed for such a time as this. For those who identify as women, we know that there are consequences when we speak truth to power. We can be fired from our jobs. We can risk our health and well-being. We can have our relationships ended. There is real life backlash. But there is also incredible progress. Women who were jailed and beaten brought us the suffrage movement and the right to vote. Women who were lambasted by the news and jailed for protests brought us the Black Lives Matter movement and the Black Mothers Bailout Fund. Women and people with uteruses whose bodies are ridiculed and harassed continue to fight for reproductive justice and sexual education everywhere. Women who lost their privacy and their health spoke out about violence and abuse, even when it was hard. And I am grateful for all of the people who've come before me who have hard-won rights and access and ability that I can live my full life in my truth as an open, bisexual, cisgendered woman in a pulpit, which is not found everywhere. People fought for me to be able to be here. And I can never show enough gratitude for that. So in the legacy of Esther, I am charged by that turning point in the story. Perhaps I have come to this position as a minister, as a woman in the 2022, for such a time as this. Maybe all of us, whatever our gender or identity, have come to who we are in our lives for just such a time as this. How do we serve to build a better world by owning all of our truth? How do we exercise our agency to make a fully liberated world for people everywhere? Whatever gender or identity you have, all of us can find and live in the truth of who we are and find out maybe why we live in such a time as this right now. I would like to raise an invisible glass, maybe a hamantaschen, a glass of wine, and toast to Esther on this Purim-inspired sermon. Esther the Queen, the one who helped to liberate her people. May we do the same.
Now is the time in our order of service where we take an offering. We know it is the gifts of all of us that help support our ability to thrive and gather. For those in person, we invite you to drop your offering into the basket on the left of the stage as you exit into the parish hall. After the service, for those online, links and instructions will be posted in the chat. You can mail us a check or donate in our PayPal giving page. Please give as generously as you can. Our offering will now be gratefully received. And our offertory song this morning is Bread and Roses.
As we come marching, marching in the beauty of the day, a million darkened kitchens, 1,000 new lofts gray, are touched with all the radiance that a sudden sun discloses. For the people hear us singing, bread and roses, bread and roses. As we come marching, marching, we battle for you. For all should receive justice and equal treatment too. Our lives shall not be sweated from birth until life closes. Hearts strive as well as bodies. Give us bread, but give us roses. As we come marching, marching, unnumbered women dead, no crying through our singing, their ancient call for bread. Small art and love and beauty, their grudging spirits new. Their sins is bread we fight for, but we fight for roses too. As we come marching, marching, we're standing proud and tall. The rising of the women is the rising of us all. No more the grudge and either, stand that tall and one reposes, but a sharing of life's glories, bread and roses, bread and roses. Our lives shall not be sweated from birth until life closes. Hearts starve as well as bodies. Give us bread, but give us roses. Hearts starve as well as bodies. Give us bread, but give us roses.
Now we invite our choir to sing our closing hymn, Put a Woman in Charge.
Way back where, in the beginning of time, man made the fire,
We'll now extinguish the chalice. I invite you to join me in extinguishing our chalice. Please repeat after me if you know the words. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth. The warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. For these we carry in our hearts until we are together again.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, our choir. This was beautiful music today. I end our service with these words. Quote, "Perhaps you have come to royal dignity for just such a time as this," end quote. May we follow the example of Queen Esther. May we own our truths in our time so that the world we dream of for our children, for our grandchildren, may one day be the world attained. May it be.